And welcome everybody. And this is going to be a little different class because I'm going to be talking about styles styles of music that are pretty unknown, and they're not studied very often, and they are not part of the standard repertoire when we start learning Brazilian music. So I'm talking about genres like Ijexá, maculelê, maracatu, boi-bumbá. These are all genres that are way more folkloric, for lack of a better word, but still they are absolutely they are part of the identity of Brazil. And the most important thing that I wanted to bring is a little bit of also social and racial awareness about what this music represents and where this music comes from. And many times we as trained musicians, we try to approach this music from the perspective of like, oh, let me just play some maracatu, let me just play some of this music. and and we forget that this music has a context, has a social background. It has a lot of elements that we should not ignore, especially regarding the all the racial problematic, a lot of religious aspects that we ignore. So first and most important thing that I want to start, and maybe this is the most important message of this class, and I will give you a brief history of some of the African ethnicities that are present in Brazil, and try to have you understand that this music is connected to ritual, to religion, to drama, to dramatic dances, and it's not only the music. And third one is a recommendation that if you decide to play this music, I recommend that you try to incorporate some of that. Otherwise, it will just sound like appropriation, you know? If you're just like taking the musical aspect and removing it from the place where that music was created, you know? So we need to give credit to the people who created this music, to the people who practice this music, and who maintain this music alive in Brazil. So, so the idea is I'm going to give you a brief historical background. It's going to be quick, and then I'm going to talk. I think I'm going to talk about three styles. You know, it's too much. Each of these could be a lecture in its own, could be a semester of work. But I think, you know, there are three ones that they represent really well what I'm trying to say. One is Ijexá, and I'm going to write in a second, or you can figure it out. Ijexá is the first one. The second one is Maracatu. And the third one is Boi-Bumbá. And all those three styles of music, they are not only music. They are, one is music connected to religion. The other one is music connected to dramatic dance. And the last one is music also connected to another type of dramatic dance. So this is the first thing we should all be aware of, is that none of the styles are just like a rhythm. So it's not gonna, I'm not gonna teach you, hey, this is how you play, ta 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 ta. Oh, now you play a maracatu. That's exactly what I'm not trying to do. I want to give you the context. So let's start. I think and I'm saying this regarding my education. I don't know what about your education, but from the perspective of having learned music in Brazil, we learn almost nothing about African music. Actually, we learn nothing, zero classes on African music. There are zero classes on African root of African music. We never learn any pattern. We learn absolutely nothing about African culture in general, about ethnicities, nothing about African history. Okay, there's zero. Unless you go to a specific class, perhaps in the history department of a university, okay? But in high school or in elementary school, you learn nothing, okay? You grow up in Brazil with this ideal of what they call racial democracy, in which everybody's equal, Brazil is great, you have black and white dancing together, you know, giving hands, and often ignoring a bloody history and you know, 350 years of horrible slavery, and also ignoring the fact that Brazil is the second country in the world with the largest black population. The first one being Nigeria. Brazil is the second one. So again, Brazil was the country in the world that received the largest number of enslaved people, captives, who were taken away from their lands, brought by the Portuguese to Brazil. Also important to remember, the Portugal's main economic activity was slave trade. That's how they made their money. And it's a horrible story, and there are many details about how they did that. It was not only entering a specific place and just stealing people. They would enter a place, they would put a governor or a king that was an ally, they would try to convert people to Christianity, they would start to encourage certain populations to fight between themselves, so the prisoners would become slaves, and then they would bring the enslaved people to Brazil. So I recommend that we all study a little more about the transatlantic, trade. And just as a reminder, the United States had roughly 500,000 captives brought from Africa. In Brazil, some say it's 4 million, some say 5 million, some say even 6 million people. And now here starts the important part. When many times we say, oh, they came all from Africa. Africa is one of the biggest continents in the world, the continent with the largest number of countries in the world, and hundreds of different ethnicities that have completely different cultures. Okay, so it's very important to make a distinction, because this will become key in understanding the evolution of local music based on which branch or which nation or ethnicity you're talking about. So quickly switching here to my phone, so you may experience a small little glitch here. Don't worry. Just a second. There you go. Do you see this? I draw a cute African map. Well, I bought a new board just for this class. Come on, give me some credit here. And so this is my rough map of Africa. And most of the population that was, oh, what is this? Sorry. Oh my God, come on, give me a break, Zoom. I think it's okay now. Most of the people who were brought to Brazil were from two different places. One is right here, and one is right here, okay? This part right here is where nowadays you have Benin and Nigeria, and it's an ethnical group called Yoruba, or a language group called Yoruba, and ethnicity that normally they called Ketu, K-E-T-U, like this. Ketu. And nowadays you have Togo, Benin, and Nigeria right here. Okay. At that time, the countries didn't exist. You only had like ethnical groups or tribes or societies that had their own language, their own religious beliefs. And this part here is called the Congo-Angola region. So you can call Congo-Angola. I'm writing Congo with K. When you write Congo with K, you mean the ethnical group, the ethnic group Congo from the Kingdom of Congo. It has a lot of history. Nowadays, in order to not confuse with the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Congo that are countries, we use Congo with K to refer to the old kingdom, and Congo with C to refer to the country nowadays. So those two areas were the areas that the Portuguese completely controlled. And the Portuguese had like kings and governors that they would, set in all those places. And they had the whole commerce, a whole trade thing going on. And for example, in the United States, most of the people who came to the United States were from this area, a little more from West Africa, and almost entering the Muslim zone, which is kind of up here in the north of Africa. So here the language group is the Yoruba, and here the language group is called Bantu. So it's very important that we also remember that we shouldn't call people by their language. We should call people by especially by their ethnicity. And many times when we're talking about the history of Africa, we ignore things and we just call people by their names, by their village, by whatever. So I'm trying to be more precise myself, because I'm also learning this as I'm researching more about this. I didn't learn this in school at all. So anyways, so Brazil also, depending on the part of Brazil, you have a larger number of people from this area or for this area. For example, São Paulo and Rio, you have the majority of people from the Congo-Angola region. And in the Northeast, in Bahia, Pernambuco, you have the majority of people from the Queto or the Jeje. There's also another ethnicity that's famous, Jeje. And they speak Yoruba language, or they speak Nago. That's another language that you see all the time. So here's, I mean, roughly speaking, two things that you need to kind of know is that most of the music that is connected to religion, to candomblé, to African religion, comes from this area. Most of the music that is connected to dance and like capoeira, kind of berimbau, that weird one string instrument, comes more from this area. That's kind of one rough difference. This area was already Catholic because of the conversion and because of the influence of the Portuguese. And this area was already way more inside the Yoruba religion with orishas and all of that we'll talk in a second. So does that make sense, kind of roughly? So let me erase my beautiful African map. All right, so the first type of music that we'll talk about and is Ijexá. And in my opinion, this was one way for me to kind of explain explain the religion. What's happening? What's the connection to religion? So, oh, this is pretty dirty now, but I think it's fine. So, Ijexá, Ijexá. Ijexá is music that is connected to the African Brazilian religion called candomblé. Candomblé. You have similar religions in other parts of the Caribbean, you know, in Cuba, in Puerto Rico, in Haiti. And the most important thing for us now to understand about this music is that for these African ethnicities that were practicing this type of religion, music is the religion. There's no separation, you know? So let me go back to my screen here. Just a second. Okay, so there's no real separation. So music represents religion. That's how you pray. You pray through dance and music. So if you nowadays go to a place where they're doing a candomblé celebration, you normally have the musicians. The musicians are guided by a master who's a drummer. And then the whole idea of this religion is that you have normally they say that you have one god called Olorum, like, or Oxalá, like big God, and then you have all these small entities that they are kind of like gods, but they represent nature. So you have a god of war, you have a god of beauty, a god of water, a god of the oceans, a god of, you know, the evil, a god of, you know, several different other gods. They're called orishas. And then for each one of them, for example, you have a different type of drumming, and the master drumming who's on the ceremony has to kind of read the way that the ceremony is working and how people are dancing. And normally there's one person there in the ceremonies who's kind of the main one, kind of like a priest. It could be a woman or a man, mãe de santo or pai de santo, who also has a lot of mediunic powers of receiving spirits and giving advice based on those extraterrestrial connections. So basically it's like a lot of drumming, and then people start dancing until they enter a sort of a trance. And then during this trance, they kind of receive one of the orishas spirit, depending on who you are. You know, each person has a specific orisha that you are more prone to receive. And then, or you can, and then you may feel way more relaxed, or you may feel angry, you may realize something about your life, and that's how the religion goes. And the music has to read those kind of exchanges and those trends. So many times the master will kind of like look to someone and see that the person is kind of impersonating one of the orishas, so he plays the type of rhythm of that particular orisha. So Ijexá, the rhythm that I'm talking about, is one modality of one rhythm that you may find inside the candomblé. And there are many more. Also, all the styles that we're talking, Maracatu, Ijexá, that I'm going to be talking today, they have hundreds of variations. It's not only one rhythm, okay? They have many different types of variations. So in Ijexá is normally a tribute to an orisha called Oshun, Oshun. Oshun, who's a woman, and the goddess of beauty and nature and rivers. And so that's one model, and that's normally how they also start a ceremony. So let me play a couple of examples here. And first I'm gonna just show rhythmic patterns too, if you don't mind. And now that I explained where this how is this music kind of situated, I don't have any real percussion instruments, but this is normally played on three atabaques, three big African congas. One is huge, the other one's medium, the other one is tiny, and then someone else has an agogo, also called gun, normally with two bells. And the bell is always the one starting, normally playing something like this.
We don't hear. Sorry.
Too loud, this? My voice? My voice or the instrument?
We don't hear
voice.
the instrument.
No.
Wait, I don't hear.
We don't hear the instrument. We hear your voice.
Probably it's too loud. What about now?
If you lower the limiter in the mute where the microphone, lower the limiter there. Don't put it on automatic limiter.
Yeah, it's
put
probably
it manual and lower the limiter there.
It is already. Let me lower this in general. Better?
No.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm gonna play then from my computer. Just give me a second here. I wanted to do my live demonstrations.
But we can't hear you as well now.
You can't hear my voice?
Now, yeah, but it was gone for a second.
Okay.
The limiter is low, so now if you play closer to the mic, now we'll hear you better.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm gonna play from my Logic. It's the same thing I recorded yesterday, so shouldn't be a problem. So here you are. Do you hear this? Nor do I, because I didn't share my Zoom thing. Just a second, everybody. Here you go. Come on. Better? I can pretend I'm playing. So the agogo is considered to be kind of one of the most important things, kind of the pulse behind, kind of the heartbeat of that. And then interestingly enough, in this type of percussion, the lowest drum, which is called rum, the big one, you know, is the one who has more flexibility. It's kind of more of the melodic drum. Normally, we always imagine that the highest pitched drum, the small ones, are going to be the ones that are going to be doing more variations and soloing. In this case, is the opposite. It's actually the lowest drum who is played by the master, and the lowest drum is the one determining kind of the direction of the ritual, you know, depending on how, you know, the vibe of the people. So the general drum pattern is ta tu pa tum ta pa boom pa pa tum pa tu pa boom pa. Let me play a quick example here for you. Something like this. So this is my own recording with my frame drum. So it's not the original sound, but at least you can get an idea of what what the type of sound is. And now this, this music is you hear a lot in many different rituals. If you search for candomblé music, you will hear a lot of that. So some people say that one of the main patterns, when it's a little faster, others, when it's a little slower, would say boom boom, 2 3 4. So these are two patterns that you hear a lot in Ijexá, which is this variation of this specific rhythm that you find in candomblé rituals. I have one recording that I like playing, which is more of the old school kind of sound, and I think it's pretty amazing. And it eventually, especially during the 70s, this type of music started to become a little more popular within popular music, like commercial music. So you started to have artists, especially Gilberto Gil, after he came back from exile during the dictatorship. He was way more interested in learning about that music. So you have songs like Toda Menina Baiana Tem like that's called Toda Menina Baiana. Is a very famous song that's very popular by Gilberto Gil. Caetano Veloso has one called Beleza Pura. Não me amarra dinheiro não. Dinheiro não. Same type of pattern, but a little faster. You have Dorival Caymmi wrote one called Afoxé. So Afoxé, by the way, maybe you've heard this word before. Afoxé is normally the group that is dancing on the streets, playing Ijexá or playing other rhythms from the candomblé tradition on the street. So it's more of a marching group. And so Gilberto Gil has a very important role, because we need to remember that in Brazil, the majority of population is Catholic. And for centuries, the Christian population has been harassing the practitioners of candomblé. So until today, nowadays is terrible what's happening. There's this fanatic evangelical Brazilians in certain places of the Northeastern special who just go all the time into the place where they celebrate and just destroy all the drums, rip all the everything in those places. So there's a history of persecution as well when we're talking about Ijexá. So let me play just one quick example here of a song that I truly love. This is called Oiá, Mulher Forte, and it's pretty amazing.
Oiá, oh mulher forte, poderosa e sagrada, dona de tanta beleza, rainha obstinada, minha mãe, meu orixá, é dona da minha vida, é tão linda, minha Oiá, me protege, mãe querida, e o Oiá, Cocilouro, e o Oiá, Cocilouro, e a Messã, e o Oiá, Cocilouro, me protege, mãe querida, e a Messã, Oiá, mulher forte, poderosa e sagrada, dona de tanta beleza, rainha obstinada, minha mãe, meu orixá, minha mãe, dona da minha vida.
So you hear a lot of this pattern, and they have two sections on this piece. One that's slower, that's more of like tick, boom, boom, tick, boom, boom, and the second part is a little faster. So, and so this is kind of the base for Ijexá. Now the question is, why don't we normally play that in a jam session? Well, exactly because this music is not really supposed to be, is not commonly played on a jam set. There are no tunes, there's no chords and improvisation necessarily. This music is connected to ritual. So what we can do is appropriate that and try to create our own sound, our own interpretation of it. So you have, all these artists that I've mentioned, Caymmi, Gilberto Gil, Caetano Veloso, who are important in bringing some of the harmonic or melodic content to that. But in essence, is music that is purely African and should be sung and played with percussion. So if you have the opportunity to attend one of those rituals, you know, a candomblé, should confuse it with umbanda or macumba. These are variations of the same, with small variations. One is more connected to spiritism, which is this, you know, other religion where you believe that you communicate with spirits, and they're all, you know, sorts of variations. But the most important one is Ijexá, that comes from this tradition of the Yoruba people from West Africa, and praying for the orishas with different sounds. I recommend checking out a video called Memórias Afro-Atlânticas. You have it on SoundCloud. Is a collection of 4 hours of recordings that an American ethnomusicologist did on 1940, where he traveled through, you know, the coast of Brazil, collecting songs and collecting all sorts of African chants that he could find. And there are parts of this recording where you see someone explaining specifically each type of drumming for each type of god, for each type of orisha. This is the, you know, the rhythm for Yansan. This is the rhythm for Eshu. This is the rhythm for Oxóssi, like all these different types. So this is called, I'm typing here on my chat for everybody. Memórias Afro-Atlânticas. And you have on, especially on sound, you have it on YouTube and on SoundCloud. On SoundCloud, you have more explanations, liner notes explaining exactly what it is. So this is kind of my brief approach to this. If you want to check out some of the popular, more well-known artists who wrote these pieces, I recommend Caetano Veloso singing Beleza Pura. Beleza Pura. Or you can say Djavan singing Sina. It's also based on this. And you also have Patuscada de Gandhi. That's another one that, this is by Gilberto Gil, the last one. These are some options for you to listen to this music in a more commercial context, compared to kind of like the really raw candomblé music that you would hear. So that leads me to our second style, which is Maracatu. And Maracatu, we know perhaps a little bit better because it became a little more popular. That's kind of the purpose of this whole class, is to show that it's not only bossa nova and samba and choro in Brazil. There's a lot of other styles that are equally important and equally fascinating. The reason they're not so popular is just because they were less affected by cultural industry, transforming them into products. So they remained a little more protected than a genre like samba or like bossa nova, which immediately, you know, had Jobim recording with Frank Sinatra and you know, playing in Carnegie Hall, and that with English lyrics. So what the music we're talking about is way more protected, is way more connected to the folklore, to the ritual where that music was created. So Maracatu, it's already different. It's way more of a dramatic dance. This is what it represents. And there's a story that I think it's important for us to remember, that in the times of slavery, it was very common for the enslaved people to elect a king and a queen. And at that time, it was kind of someone to represent the interest of the slaves when negotiating with their owner, or with the, I don't know how to even call the person who bought them. And you know, in Brazil, there's always a lot of negotiation between how much the captive population could have their own culture and how much they needed to accept the European culture. So many times you're going to see how in history there's going to be this problematic happening, until the point where, like, for example, they wanted to celebrate, sometimes the enslaved people wanted to celebrate something in the church, but they were celebrating using, you know, African languages that were, you know, considered to be pagan by the church, or like witchery. So it's really interesting to see this conflict happening all the time, because eventually, normally the European or the white people would always have to make some sort of a compromise, saying like, okay, you may celebrate in the church, okay, you can mix, you know, Iemanjá with Virgin Mary, that's fine. So that's how all this syncretism started happening in Brazil. And it's fascinating to see, you know, how suddenly, you know, you go to someone who's playing maracatu, which is also connected to religion, but with a crucifix on the wall and all sorts of different, you know, prayers and things. So anyways, at that time, it was common to have kind of a king or a queen, and they would call this queens and kings Rei do Congo, the king of Congo, and the queen of Congo. Why of Congo? It's just because of the name. You know, the king, there was a place called the Kingdom of Congo where Portugal would, you know, normally kidnap people, but you know, everywhere in all parts of Africa would call King of Congo as like a title for being just the one elected to represent the community. And after slavery was abolished in 1888, the black population continued to carry on the ritual of coronation. So you're gonna see this everywhere in almost every sort of folkloric music in Brazil. There's always the coronation of a king and of a queen. And nowadays, the king and queen, they don't have this political power of negotiation, but they're normally the community leader, or like you have that village that had that old lady that everybody loves, that everybody calls her the old grandma that takes care of them, you know? And so she's kind of chosen to be the most important character right there, and she's chosen to be the queen. So every like 3 or 4 times a year, they have a maracatu, which is actually a dramatic where they're pretending to be doing this ritual of coronation, and they normally walk into the church to receive the blessing from the priest, because the priest needs to bless the queen of Congo, which is already bizarre by itself, you know, because suddenly you need the approval of a Christian leadership to coronate a queen that is from a completely different religious background. But that's just how it is. And many times as well, all sorts of parties and celebrations were ways for the enslaved people to carry on their religious beliefs and carry on their religious practices without the authorities knowing. So the authorities would think that they're just, you know, dancing and celebrating, but actually they're praying, they're carrying on their rituals through the music. So it's about hiding from the authorities, hiding from the police. And until nowadays, it's, you know, you still read on the news, this is still happening. There's still persecution. There's still people accusing them from doing a ritual that is connected to the devil or whatever. So Maracatu normally is a parade of people dressed super well. And you have the queen with like this huge dress that she prepares for months, and the king sometimes. The queen is even more important than the king. And then they have their security guard, which is, you know, people dressed with like spears and swords, and they kind of representing the safe, you know, the, I don't know, protectors of the queen. Then you have the ambassadors in the court, which is a lot of other people who are dressed as nobles, normally European. They dress like European royalty, not like African royalty, you know. So they wear like Queen Elizabeth type of clothing, not this Queen Elizabeth, the one from the 1500s. So it's a whole mythological kind of thing that gained a completely different dimension. And so Maracatu is actually the parade, and they also have tons of different rhythms. Normally there are 2 types of maracatu. There is maracatu nação, which is normally played on the cities, and you have maracatu rural, which is the maracatu that's played on the countryside. The second one is more recent, is not as popular. The first one it's very common. That's the one that we hear all the time, and is just absolutely fascinating type of music. and they have different grooves, they have different genres, but one that's called the baki is like the taki, or like the groove that is the most known, has that weird bass drum that I want to play a little short excerpt for you. So I like to play this from, just a second, from Nação Estrela Brilhante do Recife. That's the group. They always call these groups, they're normally connected to communities. It's not just a band of people. They're like a community, normally a very poor community in the suburbs of some big city. And they call themselves according to what they call their nation. The nation is kind of the ethnical group from which they came. And it's not accurate. It's normally way more connected to the port, the city where in Africa, where the port was located, where they were kidnapped by the Portuguese. So normally they call themselves depending on the port or the boat that they came from, because this is how they were called by the Portuguese. They, instead of by their names, they just call, you know, whatever nickname you have plus the boat or the city where you were arrested. So you see in the African names in Brazil, you still see this characteristic. And so they call themselves nação, nation. We are from this nation. And they're very proud of their nation, as if it's like their ethnical group. This is Nação Estrela Brilhante do Recife, in the state of Pernambuco, where this music is very, very famous. And let me play a quick example here.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Question and answer.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
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 Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Sou eu, a nação estrela, não prometo pra faltar.
Cheguei, meu povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
Okay,
Cheguei, povo, cheguei pra vadiar.
let me stop here. It's so good, right? So what I'm showing, that there's always kind of this rhythmic displacement going on the bass. Bang, dum 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 dum, and they're always talking either about the coronation of the queen, or like we're gonna crown our queen, or they're talking about something religious, because the queen is always connected to the religion. So you hear always this type of like boom. No, you can hear this. I think it's the internet, because I tried this just before and it was working just fine. Let me play from my Logic then. See if you can hear this. Hear it. So it's just a brief recording that I did. And you always have the same thing, the agogo, playing a pattern that is called gongue. It's like 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can have a second one that's like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you have on the snare drum something almost in between triplet and 8 notes. And you know, one way that I like to write this down, maybe a little complex. If you're a musician, you may understand this, but something like this, triplets, but the second one is kind of doubled. You know, sometimes there are even more than 2 notes here in the middle, but so it's a little bit of the bass of Maracatu and how it goes. Of course, I want to upload. I didn't have time to do it all right now, but I want to upload some brief rhythmic explanation about how to play all those rhythms. And again, when we talk about like playing this in popular music or in like instrumental music, it's a whole different thing. And for example, let me show you a quick example. I play the piano. This is an instrument that is far, you know, has nothing to do with maracatu. So whenever you hear a maracatu being played on a piano, is some sort of a translation, an adaptation, or an Europeization of the rhythm. So I could do something like with harmony and cute chords and sorry, I need to turn it on. Here you go. So on my right hand, I'm doing a translation of that. On my right hand, I'm keeping the agogo pattern. And now with my left hand, I'm gonna do this. There are a few examples of that. You know, Egberto Gismonti has a piece that's called Maracatu that many people talk about, but you can use Maracatu as a section in the middle of an arrangement as well. But it's good to remember where it's coming from. That's about the queen, it's about coronation. And Alceu Valença, the famous singer-songwriter, has a piece called Maracatu, which is great. It's kind of like rock and roll. And I recommend checking that out. I can write on the chat his name. Alceu Valença, he's amazing and very, very, very popular. Alceu Valença, Maracatu. So there are many. So again, I could also play this rhythm, a very type of approach. But you don't hear, I mean, this is my invention. This is my translation. That's not, you know, you don't have piano normally playing this type of music. So again, it's pretty much of a percussion, voice and percussion type of style. So whenever you hear that, Hermeto Pascoal also has a very cool piece called Quiabo, where he plays as a maracatu that I really like. That's called Hermeto Pascoal Quiabo. So yeah, so again, the whole thing of maracatu is always having this bass displacement. Maybe my sound is too loud. I apologize if it's today the sound is really not cooperating. So this is my second just end. I want to tell a little bit about Boi-Bumbá. Boi-Bumbá. which is the third style I wanted to talk about. And Boi-Bumbá is even more complicated because the Boi-Bumbá tradition you can find, you know, in every part of Brazil, and it's completely different. The rhythm is completely different, and the one I'm going to be talking about is mostly connected to Maranhão, to the state of Maranhão in the northeast of Brazil, in the, you know, most top parts of Brazil. And yeah, thanks Perry for the explanation. And Boi-Bumbá has a story that I find it interesting. It was a way of criticizing, it was a way for the enslaved people to criticize the European white people by having a dramatic, so, you know, some say that it was based on a story, the story being that there was a couple of wait, what, yeah, in some farm, couple of people, the wife and the husband, they were enslaved by this European man. And then this European man had an ox, a boy. This is how we call boy. And he really loved that ox. It was his love of his life. And then the wife of the other, you know, the couple, the wife wanted to eat the tongue of the ox. And she asked her husband, "Oh, can you please, I'm craving ox tongue." And her husband was saying, "No, but you know, it's the favorite ox of the European, you know, from the big guy here, you know, we shouldn't mess around. Oh, please, I'm craving, I'm pregnant." So he goes ahead, he kills the ox and he cuts the tongue, gives to his wife, she eats and she's all happy. And then the European white guy comes and like, "Wait, where's my ox? You know, what happened?" And then someone said like, "Oh, this, you know, that guy killed your ox." And then the owner of the ox was desperate and like, "No, my God, we need to, I can't, it was my favorite animal in the world. You need to revive the ox, otherwise I'm gonna kill you." And then, you know, the European guy tried to hire all sorts of Portuguese doctors and famous doctors to come and resuscitate the ox. It didn't work. And then the black guy with his wife, they decided to call some of the native Brazilians who used to live in the area, and they come and they make some magic and the ox resuscitates. But the moment the ox resuscitates, is now dressed with a lot of colors and stars all over his body, and he flies away, and you know, it becomes a magical ox. So this legend, some say that it is because of a real story that happened where the Dutch government, there was a Dutch small colony for some part in Brazil. Brazil was controlled by the Dutch in that area for some few years, and one of the governors decided to trick the population by having a fake ox flying, because he wanted more people to cross the bridge and pay toll for him. Anyways, it's a different story. In any case, the story about the flying ox, this magical ox, became so popular that people from all over the place started singing songs praising this ritual. And until nowadays, you have all over Brazil, in the south, in the north, in the central part of Brazil, different communities who celebrate this event. And they normally try to enact the story one more time. There are many variations, you know. In some, the ox didn't die. In others, you know, there are other characters. But normally, each person dresses like one of these characters. One is the white European guy. The other one is the couple. The other one is the ox. And then they dance. And you can see, like, the dresses are amazing. I recommend that you type, you know, Boi-Bumbá and see some dances on YouTube. It's pretty fascinating. And again, the type of music is very different depending on the place. Okay, it can be something that's connected more to samba. It can be something that's connected more to more of a baião, or more like a coco style. So I wanted to show one small example that is connected to the idea of the way I heard this being celebrated in Maranhão, this northern state of Brazil. And I want to play perhaps a piece that was composed by a composer from São Paulo, Ana Maria Carvalho, who celebrates a lot this. She's very important in every celebration of the boy. And maybe it's a good way for us to wrap it up. So the main pattern, they use frame drums like this when they play Boi-Bumbá, and the rhythm is boom boom ba ba boom boom ba ba boom boom ba ba boom boom ba ba boom boom ba ba. Let me play on my Logic here for a second. And I love Boi-Bumbá. It's just so good. Okay. There you go. See if you can. Sorry, I just need to change some things here so we can only hear the patterns that I'm playing. All right. There you go. Can you hear this? No, right? Oh, Zoom, today is not my day. All right. Okay, so first thing that we need to notice is this. First pattern and the most important, this one. You hear that? Maybe this is how I would write this. And this whole thing has always this vibe of a 3 against 2. If you play 3 against 2, you will have kind of this result, you know. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. So you always have this type of triplet feel the whole time. You know, here's another. I'm gonna add now my triplet feel. See if you can hear. And then the shaker, which is absolutely amazing. The shaker is almost triplet. So the way, I don't have a good shaker here. So normally I just take some maracas and I do the shake by myself, you know. Instead of and so again, a lot of triplet vibes and a lot of triplet little ideas, and so it's absolutely absolutely fascinating and has this triplet feel and many different I don't know, nuances in this rhythm. And you have songs, you know. So this is the song from Maria Carvalho that I love. It's a very, you know, it's a famous type of like classic Boi-Bumbá type of sound. So what I'm doing, I'm gonna keep on my left hand something like, let me put on my, maybe I'm gonna put my screen view of my piano for a second. So. No, my left hand is playing what you see here on the screen. Já falei com os olhos que te amo e você não ouviu. falei com as mãos que te quero e você não sentiu. Eu já fui até a lua pra tentar te convencer e acabei conquistando a lua. Só não conquistei você. Eu já fui até a lua pra tentar te convencer e acabei namorando a lua. Só não namorei você. Lalela, a lareira. It's a beautiful song, right? So this is typical kind of Boi-Bumbá sound. All this short patterns all together. There's one recording that I love, and by the way, is the recording that I used to admire a lot, and then Bertram sent me the other day the same exact version. Let me play for you guys. It's gonna take one quick second here. We're here. It's called Aniversário do Boi, the birthday of the boy. Boi is ox. Can you hear this or not? No. Good. So let me share my audio here and we'll, there you go.
E meu boi, chegou tempo do teu aniversário, que tu tá completando 56 anos de trabalho. E meu boi, chegou tempo do teu aniversário, que tu tá completando 56 anos de trabalho. E eu venho te assegurando, e o boi não vai esmorecer, pra ti não deixar os adversários te vencer. E boizinho, tô segurando, o boi não vai esmorecer, pra ti não deixar os adversários te vencer. Tu tá completando 56 anos de trabalho, e o vento tô segurando, o vento vai esmorecer, pra te não deixar os outros te vencer. E o vento tô segurando.
Okay. So that's kind of typical boy example. I love this recording. And if you wanna check out more Ana Maria Carvalho, this woman, you know, who's amazing. That's her music. It has more harmony. So it's gorgeous. Let me see the name of this album. It's called Por Mim e Pelo Povo, for myself and for the people. Por mim e pelo povo. I can write here. And por mim e pelo povo. Anyways, Boi-Bumbá has this whole idea of when they depict the European or the white person on that theater that they would do, they would always depict the European as being kind of stupid and dumb, and at the same time showing how the other people are clever, how the natives were amazing for managing to resuscitate the dead ox, and how the black people were smart enough to be able to trick and how they can do whatever they want. They can, if they want, they can go and kill the ox and eat the tongue of the ox, you know, and defy the rules of the authorities. So it has a lot of meaning that was very important, but it got kind of diluted. So nowadays it's mostly about, you know, praising for the ox and the dancing beautiful ox. And again, those are so, you know, these are all incredible rhythmic patterns. Of course, there are many others that I could start mentioning. There's congadas, there are like maculelê and other types of emboladas, caboclinho, cavalo marinho, rhythms that are very local and fascinating. But I think these three examples that I gave can give you a little bit of an idea of how connected they are to either a dramatic story or to religion, and how they're part of they're more than just the music. So if we want to play them, it's always nice to have this in mind. So we're just not ignoring and erasing such a big, important part of the context behind those styles. So again, try to transcribe, try to learn, see if you can, you know, feel free to change and transform, but always keeping an awareness about where is this coming from and why, what's the purpose of this music, you know? And if you have that awareness, then that's my opinion, then it's perfectly fine for you to do whatever you want with it, as long as you have that awareness. The problem is when we see a lot of this music being performed by people with absolutely no idea of what is behind that music, because then it feels like a form of erasing the culture and just keeping, you know, a little part of it, the pattern or the rhythm. So it's much more than that, you know. So I do have a lot of sources. I didn't have time to compile everything in a page, but I do recommend that you try to check out these three different styles. There are many documentaries online that you can see. And let me see, Amir is asking, what's the musical connection between African and native in Boi-Bumbá, as it comes from the inland too? There are many, it depends on the place, actually. This is what I understood from this. If you go, for example, to Minas Gerais, the state in the center of Brazil, you see that the music is way less syncopated, is way more correct, I would say, almost like cute. If you go more to the Northeast, it will feel a little more transformative, way more syncopated, way more African. If you go to Parintins, the big festival in Amazon, where they have a big Boi-Bumbá festival, there the type of Boi-Bumbá they play is completely different. It's way more of like a commercial axé, kind of like pop music. It has absolutely nothing to do with the groove that I just played, and that's also part of the problem. These rhythms, they are not a defined concept. It's not something that you'll see like, oh, that's how you play. You can walk 10 minutes and there's going to be another city and they play it completely different, and they will call it completely different according to their origin. So the names are a mess. This person calls it boi, this other Boi-Bumbá, boi de mamão, boi mágico, boi de mina. Like the names are just like, it's impossible to almost study that. So we need to remember that it's kind of like, it's always an interpretation, or it's always we're trying to generalize, you know? And yeah, does that answer kind of your question? And so anyone has questions, you can speak on the microphone if you want and unmute yourselves, or type, whatever you prefer. Can you write the three patterns together? Maybe I can, you know. How am I gonna do this? I don't even know how to write music anymore. This is complicated because this is in between a lot of rhythms, you know, so it's hard to write them down. And also those are all styles that like they have something dirty about the way the rhythm is not precise, and that's kind of part of what is good. My belief is that all the sorts of imperfections and the swing, the special swing that you hear, it's normally coming because of a technical challenge on the instrument. Some pattern is difficult to play alternating hands, so it created kind of this type of imperfection, or because of the technique of playing pandero, you have some notes that are a little more delayed. And I think that's my opinion, that this is part of why sometimes we have certain nuances that are so unique. So Boi-Bumbá, I would say that you have something like this, maybe, or you can have this, and then you have this together the whole time. Oh, sorry. Chakaraka, 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 tung, chikung ta ta, tung, chikung ta ta, tung, chikung ta ka. Does this make sense? You know? And it's nice because sometimes you'll hear in 3, sometimes you hear in 2. So there's this ambiguous kind of idea. Sometimes the lyrics of like the song that I play, there are parts of the words, that melody that are in 2, and there are parts that are in 3. It's all triplets. La da 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 da. Meanwhile, you have la da la da 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 la na 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 la na 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 na. So a lot of triplet over 8 notes, which gives this special rub that I really love. And again, I don't think there's a visual way to represent. The best way is just to try to play together and understand that feel. This is the best way, or try to play the actual instrument, because then you understand kind of like the physical challenge of it, and you understand where the swing is coming from. Many times it comes also from the dance, the movement that you're doing with your hand in order to play, you know, the shaker, or in order to play the drum. And that is part, is not only the, you know, you're not only going to be able to play just with the fingers, it requires the whole movement as well. So, well, anyone else has any other questions about this themes? I don't know if I know anything. I'm still learning a lot about this, these different genres. And so I'm discovering, I'm trying to tell you everything that I've discovered. Ah, by the way, this is, if you're interested in this kind of information, check out this book, Rhythms of Resistance. It's by this guy here called Peter Fryer. It's a great book where he describes a lot of the African root, and he does a very thorough research. Unfortunately, this is one of the best documents that I found, and it's not written by a Brazilian, which makes me sad. And so Eliza has a question, like how, if the music, yeah, if the rhythm differs depending on the region, how do you identify the music as Boi-Bumbá? Or did you mean the basic rhythm stays the same? No, the basic rhythm does not stay the same. So you maybe won't identify it based on the rhythm. You are going to identify it based on the words, based on the ritual. You're going to see people dressed with costumes. You're going to see someone dressed like a magical ox full of stars and colors, bunch of colors. Then you're going to know. And it's probably around the months of June, July. So the drumming part of it is going to be different in each place you go to, you know? And yeah, Bertram is saying if I can talk about Coco Baião Forró next time. Yes, yes, that's a good idea. I wanted to talk about frevo a lot, which is another form of carnival music, you know, that is exciting. It's more connected to choro in terms of a little more European in the melodic approach, but it's absolutely fascinating. There's so much history about it. But I need to do some research myself too. So sometimes it takes some time. So that's it, everybody. This is also a nice book, by the way. Mário de Andrade, the famous musicologist. He's a very famous intellectual and writer in Brazil. He wrote this melody called As Melodias do Boi, the melodies of the ox, e outras peças. This he did transcribe a lot of things, a lot of melodies, and it has nothing to do with the rhythm that I've just played. It had absolutely nothing to do, because they're mostly collected from the countryside of the state of São Paulo, where, you know, the state where I was born. And it's like super simple little silly melodies that has nothing to do with the with the other types of music, but still it's part of the festivity, part of the ritual, part of the dramatic dance. So anyways, check out some videos on YouTube about that, and be in touch with me if you want more, if you want to watch some of that. I didn't want to play too much. And the book that I recommend is called Rhythms of Resistance, by the way. And I didn't send to everybody. Yeah, I'm just trying to put here. Just the most important thing is for us to understand and remember the context behind each of those styles. I have more questions here. Let me see. Thomas, I kind of hear some Jewish sounding stuff in these rhythms, harmonies. It's just my imagination, or there's some connection? Good question. Well, you know, the city where Maracatu became very famous is also the city where the first synagogue in Brazil was built, the city of Recife. And many say that, you know, in the beginning of colonization in Brazil, Portugal didn't send immediately the nobles and the explorers. Portugal sent whoever they didn't want, because it was such a dangerous thing to travel for 3 months in a horrible ship and get to this land with nothing, you know, and trying to survive on the jungle. So the first people that actually came were not the noble Portuguese, were the Moors, who are Arabs that used to live in that area. Jews that were at the time, you know, still running away from Inquisition and, you know, being prosecuted, and sometimes even Turks. So you have Turks that were there from war. Portugal was in war with Turkey a lot, you know. So you find in the northeast of Brazil some crazy cultural traits that are not coming from Portugal, that are coming clearly from other places. So I don't think that necessarily, I don't hear any sort of Jewish musical influence necessarily, but maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe I'll prove myself wrong, you know. All right, everybody. So I hope you survived the Corona and all this difficult times, and be in touch. I hope you check out more of this music. And if you find something cool, please send it to me. I'm collecting materials. I love when people send me cool music and articles and books and cool stuff. Okay, so please send it to me. All right, bye everybody.